The Sapphire Express thundered through the moonlit Swiss Alps, its opulent carriages gleaming like jewels against the snow-draped peaks. In the first-class dining car, crystal glasses clinked amid murmurs of high society. Suddenly, a piercing scream shattered the elegance. Madame Elise Dupont, the renowned opera singer, clutched her throat, her sapphire necklace, worth a king's ransom, glistening under the chandeliers. She collapsed in a heap, her eyes wide with unspoken terror. As passengers gasped, a diminutive Belgian detective with a waxed mustache rose from his corner table. "Mon Dieu," murmured Hercule Poirot. "This is no accident. Murder has boarded the train." The engine whistled ominously, sealing their fate in this rolling prison of secrets. Chapter 1. The Midnight Scream. The Sapphire Express carved its way through the Swiss Alps, a silver serpent weaving through the moonlit snowscapes of 1933. Its polished carriages, a testament to the decadence of the era, gleamed under the starlight, their windows reflecting the jagged peaks like mirrors of ice. Inside, the first-class dining car hummed with the clink of crystal and the murmur of Europe's elite. Diplomats, aristocrats, and industrialists, their laughter, a fragile veneer over secrets as deep as the ravines outside. The air carried the scent of roasted pheasant, vintage champagne, and the faint musk of expensive perfumes, a sensory tapestry that enveloped the passengers in an illusion of untouchable luxury. Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective with a mustache as meticulously waxed as his reputation, sat alone at a corner table. His sharp eyes, hidden behind a facade of polite disinterest, scanned the room. He was en route to Geneva, seeking a rare moment of respite after unraveling a smuggling ring in Istanbul. The Sapphire Express, famed for its opulence and exclusivity, promised a journey of tranquility. Yet, as Poirot sipped his café au lait, his little gray cells, those tireless engines of deduction, hummed with unease. Something in the air felt amiss, a dissonance beneath the orchestrated elegance. The clock above the mahogany bar ticked toward midnight. Death. A half-empty champagne flute rested on the side table, its bubbles still fizzing, as if mocking the stillness of her form. The air carried a faint, bitter almond scent, unmistakable to those familiar with poison. Dr. Heinrich Vogel, a German physician with a stern jaw and wire-rimmed spectacles, knelt beside her, his fingers probing her wrist for a pulse that no longer existed. "Cyanide," he pronounced, his accent clipped. "The smell is unmistakable. She was poisoned, and recently." His medical bag, open beside him, revealed an array of vials and instruments, one of which caught Poirot's eye, a small, unmarked bottle that seemed out of place. The compartment filled with onlookers, their faces a gallery of shock and suspicion. Armand Dupont, Elise's husband, and a French industrialist with a furrowed brow and ink-stained cuffs, clutched his wife's lifeless hand. "Elise, mon amour," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Who could have done this? She had no enemies, only admirers." Yet Poirot noted the tremor in his grip, the way his eyes darted to the sapphire necklace, untouched despite its rumored value. A king's ransom, whispered to carry a curse that brought death to its owners. Among the gathering crowd stood Lady Victoria Harrington, an English aristocrat whose fox fur stole and sharp tongue marked her as a woman of means and malice. Her lips curled in disdain as she surveyed the scene. "Such a tragedy," she said, her tone more theatrical than sincere. But flaunting that cursed gem invited trouble. Poirot's gaze lingered on her trembling hands, belying her composure. Whispers in the dining car had hinted at her gambling debts tied to the Duponts' financial empire. Count Ivan Rostov, a Russian exile with brooding features and a cigarette perpetually dangling from his lips, leaned against the doorway. His dark eyes flickered with something unreadable. Anger, perhaps, or grief. The Duponts profited from my family's ruin during the Revolution. He muttered to no one in particular, his Slavic accent thick with bitterness. Her voice calm yet piercing. We are trapped until dawn, a rolling prison with a murderer among us. Hercule Poirot will uncover the truth. His words hung heavy, the train's rhythmic clatter the only sound. Poirot's inspection of the compartment revealed more questions than answers. The champagne flute bore faint fingerprints, not Elise's. A torn ticket stub lay under the settee, suggesting a clandestine meeting. The sapphire necklace, its clasp intact, seemed an odd oversight for a thief. And then, as the train emerged from the tunnel, Poirot glimpsed a shadow flitting past the window, a figure, or merely the play of moonlight on snow. He questioned Armand first. "Monsieur Dupont, where were you when the scream was heard?" Armand adjusted his tie, his fingers stained with ink. "In my compartment, reviewing contracts. Elise insisted on dining alone tonight." Yet the freshness of the ink suggested recent writing, perhaps a note, perhaps a lie. Lady Harrington, when pressed, scoffed. "I was playing bridge with the conductor and 2 diplomats. Ask them." But her trembling hands and the rumor of her debts to Dupont's firm painted a different picture. Count Rostov admitted to lingering in the smoking car alone, but a dropped handkerchief monogrammed IR near the crime scene raised Poirot's brow. A careless loss, or a deliberate plant, he mused aloud. Miss Beaumont, trembling, confessed to handling Elise's correspondence. "She was cruel sometimes," she whispered, "but I needed the job." The letter in her pocket, when Poirot gently extracted it, was a love note addressed to Armand, unsigned. Her cheeks flushed scarlet. Dr. Vogel, wiping his spectacles, admitted to carrying cyanide in his medical kit for emergencies, he claimed. "Madame Dupont consulted me for migraines. I prescribed only laudanum." Yet the missing vial gnawed at Poirot's suspicions. As the interrogation ended, the train jolted, its lights flickering. A distant howl echoed from the mountains, and the passengers exchanged uneasy glances. Avalanche stood motionless under the brooding Swiss Alps, its polished exterior now a frost-kissed cage. Inside the lounge car, where velvet drapes framed frosted windows, Hercule Poirot assembled the passengers, their faces illuminated by flickering oil lamps that cast elongated shadows across the mahogany paneling. The air was thick with suspicion, the rhythmic clatter of the train replaced by an oppressive silence, broken only by the occasional creak of settling ice outside. The murder of Madame Elise Dupont, her lifeless form still vivid in their minds, hung over the gathering like a storm cloud, and Poirot, with his immaculate moustache and piercing gaze, stood as the eye of the tempest. "Messieurs et mesdames," he began, his voice a measured cadence that commanded attention. "A crime has been committed, and the murderer is among us. The Sapphire Express is our crucible, and truth will be forged through order and method." His eyes, sharp as a falcon's, scanned the faces before him. Armand Dupont, the grieving husband, Lady Victoria Harrington, the haughty aristocrat, Count Ivan Rostov, the brooding exile, Miss Clara Beaumont, the nervous secretary, and Dr. Heinrich Vogel, the stern physician. Each, Poirot knew, held a piece of the puzzle, but which were clues, and which were cunning distractions? He began with Armand Dupont, whose tailored suit was marred by fresh ink stains on his cuffs a detail Poirot's meticulous mind had not overlooked. "Monsieur Dupont," Poirot said, his tone polite yet probing. "You claim you were in your compartment reviewing contracts when your wife met her fate. Yet your hands betray recent writing. What, pray, was so urgent?" Armand's face paled, his fingers twitching as he adjusted his tie. "Business matters," he stammered. "My firm is in delicate negotiations. I was drafting a letter to Paris." He produced a crumpled sheet from his pocket, its ink still wet, but the contents were mundane, a routine directive to a manager. Too mundane, Poirot thought, for a man whose wife had just been poisoned. "And the sapphire necklace," Poirot pressed, "worth a fortune, yet untouched. Curious." Dining car with the conductor and 2 diplomats when the scream rang out. Verify it if you must. Yet the tremor in her hands suggested more than indignation, and Poirot recalled rumors of her gambling losses at Monte Carlo, losses tied to the Duponts' financial empire. Count Ivan Rostov, leaning against a pillar with a cigarette glowing like a tiny beacon, exuded a dangerous calm. His dark eyes, shadowed by years of exile, fixed on Poirot with defiance. "The Duponts profited from my family's ruin during the Bolshevik upheaval," he said, his Slavic accent thick with resentment. "That sapphire was stolen from my ancestors, sold to line their coffers." He admitted to a heated exchange with Elise earlier that evening, their voices low but intense in the corridor. "I demanded she acknowledge its history," he said, exhaling smoke. "She laughed in my face." When asked his whereabouts, he claimed the smoking car, alone, a weak alibi, Poirot noted, especially when he spotted a monogrammed handkerchief, IR, near the crime scene. Rostov's eyes narrowed. Lost, perhaps, or planted. The word hung heavy, a challenge to Poirot's scrutiny. Miss Clara Beaumont, the youngest of the group, fidgeted with her pearl necklace, her American accent soft but strained. Her blonde curls framed a face pale with fear, and her eyes darted to Armand with a longing that did not escape Poirot. "I was Madame Dupont's secretary," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "She was demanding, sometimes cruel, but I'd never harm her." Yet the crumpled love letter in her pocket, addressed to Armand, suggested deeper entanglements. When Poirot gently pressed her to reveal it, she blushed crimson. "It's private," she stammered, but surrendered the note. Its florid prose hinted at an affair, though unsigned. "Did you love Monsieur Dupont?" Poirot asked softly. Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I thought he cared for me," she whispered, "but Elise found out." Her confession was in the champagne. But who poured it? And why leave the sapphire untouched? His eyes lingered on the handkerchief, now in his pocket, its monogram a potential red herring. Was it Rostov's carelessness or another's cunning? He returned to the crime scene, compartment 7, where Elise's body had been covered with a sheet, her sapphire necklace still gleaming ominously. The champagne flute, now in Poirot's gloved hands, revealed smudged fingerprints. Not Elise's, but too faint to identify. The torn ticket stub under the settee suggested a secret rendezvous. But with whom? Poirot's fingers brushed the velvet cushions, finding a single sapphire bead, its thread frayed. "A struggle, perhaps?" he murmured. The necklace's clasp, intact, puzzled him. Why poison and not steel? Outside, the wind howled, and the passengers grew restless, their whispers a chorus of fear and accusation. Poirot questioned the conductor, Monsieur Lefebvre, who confirmed Lady Harrington's bridge game, but admitted he'd stepped away briefly to check the engine. Enough time, Poirot noted, for mischief. Lefebvre also mentioned seeing Rostov near compartment 7 before the scream, though the Count denied it. Poirot's little grey cells churned. Armand's ink stains, Harrington's debts, Rostov's grudge, Beaumont's love, Vogel's cyanide. Each thread wove a tapestry of motives, yet none aligned perfectly. He recalled the diary in Elise's luggage, its pages hinting at betrayal. Armand's secrets wound me, but the Count's threats terrify. A pressed wolfsbane flower marked one entry, its poisonous nature a chilling clue. Was it symbolic or literal? As the group dispersed, the train's lights flickered, plunging the lounge into momentary darkness. A woman's gasp, Clara's, echoed, followed by the clatter of a dropped glass. When the lights returned, a note lay on the floor near Poirot's feet. The sapphire sees all. Its handwriting matched none he'd seen. A deliberate misdirection, or a new player in the game? Poirot's gaze swept the room, his mind racing. The killer hides its figure, a beacon of calm amid the storm, paced the aisle, his polished shoes clicking with metronomic precision. His little grey cells, ever restless, churned through the fragments of the mystery. A scream, a sapphire, a cyanide-laced flute, and a cast of suspects whose secrets wove a tapestry as intricate as the Alps themselves. With the train stranded by the avalanche, time seemed suspended, yet Poirot pressed forward, his mind a steel trap snapping at every detail. The power, briefly restored after the flicker in the lounge, bathed the carriage in a soft amber glow, but the shadows seemed to pulse with secrets. He began his inquiries anew, determined to unravel the threads of motive and opportunity that bound the passengers to Elise Dupont's murder. The sapphire necklace, its curse whispered about in hushed tones, remained a tantalizing enigma, untouched, yet central to the crime. Poirot summoned Dr. Heinrich Vogel to a private corner of the lounge, where a velvet curtain offered a semblance of seclusion. The physician's stern features, framed by wire-rimmed spectacles, betrayed a flicker of unease as he clutched his medical bag. "Herr Doctor," Poirot began, his voice soft but piercing. "You confirmed cyanide as the cause of death, yet your kit contains such a poison. A vial is missing, you say. When did you last check it?" Vogel's jaw tightened, his German accent thickening under scrutiny. "This evening, before dinner," he replied. "I noticed the gap when I examined Madame Dupont's body. Someone must have taken it." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And you carried cyanide for emergencies?" Vogel nodded, his fingers brushing the bag. "In my profession, it is not uncommon, for euthanasia, in rare cases, or chemical analysis, but I swear, I did not use it on her." Yet Poirot noted a faint tremor in his hands, and the almond-like scent clinging to his coat, perhaps from the examination, or something more sinister. Leaving Vogel, Poirot returned to compartment 7, where Elise's body lay beneath a sheet, guarded by the conductor, Monsieur Lefebvre. The air was colder here, the scent of cyanide mingling with the floor crimson upholstery. Her fingers twisted her pearl necklace, and her eyes darted nervously, as if expecting pursuit. "Mademoiselle," Poirot said gently, "you admitted Madame Dupont was cruel. But there is more, no? The letter in your pocket speaks of love, for Monsieur Dupont." Clara's cheeks flushed, and tears welled. "It's true," she whispered. "Armand and we planned to elope. Elise found out 2 days ago. She threatened to ruin me, to tell the world I was a homewrecker." Her voice broke, and she clutched the table. "I hated her, but I didn't kill her." Poirot's gaze softened, but his mind catalogued her words. Jealousy, a potent motive, and access to Elise's habits. "Did you pour her champagne?" he asked. Clara shook her head vehemently. "No! I was in my compartment, writing. A letter." The hesitation in her voice was a crack in her armor, and Poirot noted it. Lady Victoria Harrington, summoned next, stood by the bar, her fox fur stole draped like a shield. Her sharp features were set in defiance, but her trembling cigarette betrayed her nerves. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her English accent crisp, "this interrogation is tiresome. I was at bridge when the scream sounded. The conductor and 2 diplomats can confirm it." Poirot tilted his head. "Yet you left the table briefly, did you not? And your debts to Monsieur Dupont's firm are well known." Harrington's eyes flashed. "Slander! Yes, I owed money, but Elise was no saint. She blackmailed me, threatening to expose my losses unless I paid her in jewels." Poirot's brow arched. "Jewels? Like the sapphire?" Harrington faltered, then recovered. "I meant metaphorically. I had no reason to kill her." Yet a folded note in her purse, produced under pressure, confirmed her alibi, but it was written in fresh ink, suspiciously recent. Count Ivan Rostov, chain smoking in the smoking car, exuded a dangerous calm, his Slavic features etched with bitterness. "You suspect me because of my handkerchief," he said, preempting Poirot's question. "I admit I dropped it deliberately near the compartment. To divert suspicion." Ink-stained cuff suggested a hidden act, and Rostov's planted clue revealed a cunning mind. Poirot's fingers brushed the diary he'd found in Elise's luggage, its pages revealing more than intended. "Armand's infidelity wounds me, but the Count's threats terrify. The sapphire is my burden." A pressed wolfsbane flower, poisonous and symbolic, marked the entry. Was it a clue to the method, or a distraction? As he pondered, the train jolted, and the lights flickered once more, plunging the carriage into darkness. A woman's scream, Clara's, pierced the silence, followed by the clatter of a dropped object. When the lights returned, Poirot found a sapphire earring on the floor, its mate missing. Another plant, he wondered, examining its frayed clasp, identical to the necklace's. He confronted Harrington, who paled. "Not mine," she insisted. "Someone's framing me." But her earlier admission of blackmail lingered in Poirot's mind. The conductor, Monsieur Lefebvre, approached, his face ashen. "Monsieur Poirot, the avalanche is shifting, but we're still trapped for hours. And I found this." He handed Poirot a crumpled telegram, discarded in the corridor. "Elise plans to disinherit Armand. Act now." It was unsigned, but the paper matched Clara's stationery. Poirot's eyes narrowed. A red herring? With a key to motive. The wind howled louder, rattling the windows, and Poirot felt the weight of unseen eyes. He returned to compartment 7, where the air seemed to hum with secrets. A faint scratch on the window frame caught his attention, a mark of forced entry, or an illusion of the frost. "The puzzle assembles," he murmured, "but the pieces misfit." As he stepped into the corridor, another note slipped under his door. "Beware the sapphire's curse." The handwriting, deliberately disguised, matched none he'd seen. Was it a warning or a taunt? Poirot stood alone, the train's stillness a mirror to his resolve. The killing necklace glinting ominously in memory, hung over the passengers, each a thread in a tapestry of deceit. Poirot's little grey cells churned, piecing together the fragments. A poisoned flute, a torn ticket stub, a monogrammed handkerchief, and a cryptic note warning of a curse. The truth he knew lay buried beneath layers of misdirection, waiting to be unearthed. With the train stranded, time seemed to congeal. Yet Poirot pressed forward, his polished shoes clicking against the parquet floor as he moved with purpose. The passengers, their faces etched with fear and fatigue, watched him warily, their breaths visible in the frigid air. The sapphire necklace, untouched, yet central to the crime, whispered of motives deeper than greed. Poirot's mind returned to the diary found in Elise's luggage, its pages a litany of betrayal. Armand's infidelity wounds me, but the Count's threats terrify. The sapphire is my burden. The pressed wolfsbane flower, its poisonous nature a chilling echo of the cyanide, gnawed at his thoughts. Was it a clue to the method, or a cunning distraction? Poirot began his investigation anew, summoning Armand Dupont to the dining car, where the crimson upholstery seemed to pulse with accusation. Armand, his tailored suit rumpled, and his ink-stained cuffs betraying nervous habits, stood with a furrowed brow. "Monsieur Dupont," Poirot said, his voice a velvet blade, "your wife's diary speaks of infidelity. You claim devotion, yet Miss Beaumont believes otherwise." Armand's face flushed, his hands clenching. "Clara is delusional," he snapped. "Elise was my world. I was in my compartment, working when she died." Poirot's eyes lingered on a pressed flower in Armand's buttonhole. Wolfsbane, identical to the one in the diary. "A curious choice, monsieur," Poirot remarked. "Symbolic, perhaps?" Armand faltered, claiming it was a gift from Elise, but his eyes darted to the floor, a telltale sign of evasion. Poirot noted the fresh ink on his cuffs, suggesting a recent letter, perhaps the telegram warning of disinheritance, or something more damning.
Fatal dose, perhaps under the guise of treatment? Lady Victoria Harrington, encountered in the lounge, exuded defiance despite the late hour. Her fox fur stole draped elegantly, but her cigarette trembled as she lit it. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her English accent sharp, "you waste time. I was at bridge, as I told you." Yet Poirot pressed, "Your debts to the Duponts suggest a motive, madame. And Elise's blackmail, did it involve the sapphire?" Harrington's eyes flashed. "She threatened to expose my losses unless I paid her, but murder? Absurd." Poirot noted her purse, where the sapphire earring had been found. A plant, she claimed, but its frayed clasp matched the necklace's. "Someone seeks to frame you," Poirot mused. "Or you seek to deflect." Her alibi note, written in fresh ink, mirrored Armand's, suggesting coordination or deception. Count Ivan Rostov, chain-smoking in the smoking car, met Poirot's gaze with a smirk. "You still suspect my handkerchief," he said, his Slavic accent thick with defiance. "I admitted planting it to mislead. My quarrel is with Armand, not Elise." Poirot tilted his head. "Yet you argued with her, monsieur, over the sapphire's history, and your alibi, alone in this car, is weak." Rostov exhaled smoke, his eyes distant. "The sapphire was my family's, stolen during the revolution. I wanted it back, but I'm no murderer." Poirot recalled the diary's mention of Rostov's threats and the torn ticket stub from a second-class carriage. Had Rostov arranged a secret meeting with Elise only to be thwarted? Miss Clara Beaumont, found trembling in her compartment, was Poirot's final stop. Her blonde curls framed a face pale with guilt, and her pearl necklace snapped under her nervous fingers. "Mademoiselle," Poirot said gently, "your love for Monsieur Dupont is clear, as is Elise's cruelty. Did it drive you to poison?" Clara's tears spilled. "I forged the love letter to frame Armand," she confessed, her voice breaking. "Elise humiliated me daily, calling me a nobody, trick of the frost." As he pondered, the train jolted, and a passenger's cry broke the silence. Poirot hurried to the baggage car, where a gunshot echoed, its report muffled by the snow. Count Rostov lay slumped against a crate, clutching his shoulder, blood seeping through his fingers. "Ambushed," he gasped, pointing to a revolver on the floor. Poirot examined it. No fingerprints, but the wound was superficial, suggesting a staged attack. "A ploy for sympathy, monsieur?" Poirot asked, his eyes piercing. Rostov grimaced. "I wanted to divert suspicion. I'm no killer." Yet the revolver's presence, clean of prints, was another layer of deception. Poirot returned to the lounge, where the passengers gathered, their faces a gallery of fear and accusation. He held up the sapphire earring, its mate still missing. "This, like the handkerchief, is a distraction," he said. "But the truth emerges." His gaze swept the room, noting Harrington's eavesdropping, Vogel's nervous fidgeting, and Clara's tear-streaked face. Armand stood apart, his wolfsbane flower now missing from his buttonhole. "The puzzle assembles," Poirot murmured, "but one piece eludes." The wind howled, rattling the windows, and the lamps flickered, casting the lounge into momentary darkness. A clatter sounded, a dropped glass, or something more. When the light returned, a vial lay in the snow outside, visible through the window. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Discarded evidence, or another ruse? He stepped into the corridor, where a new note awaited. "The sapphire's curse claims all." The handwriting, disguised, matched none he'd seen, but its persistence suggested a mind taunting him. Poirot stood alone, the train's stillness a mirror to his resolve. "The killer hides in plain sight," he said softly, his mustache twitching. "But Hercule Poirot will unearth the truth." The Sapphire Express, locked in snow and shadow, held its secrets like a clenched fist, but the detective's mind was a chisel, carving through the ice. Chapter 5. Echoes of Betrayal. The Sapphire Express, a gilded prison locked in the icy...
The wolfsbane flower, the planted handkerchief, and the cryptic notes, warning of a curse. The truth, he sensed, was close, yet veiled by a fog of deception. Poirot's sharp eyes scanned Rostov, whose Slavic features were taut with pain, or performance. "Monsieur le Comte," he said, his voice a velvet blade. "This wound is superficial, staged perhaps to garner sympathy. Why such theatrics?" Rostov's eyes flashed defiance through the haze of cigarette smoke. "I was ambushed," he insisted, his accent thick. "Someone fired at me in the dark." Yet the absence of fingerprints and the revolver's pristine condition suggested calculation, not chaos. Poirot knelt, examining the weapon, a standard model, easily acquired, but its placement was too convenient. "A diversion, monsieur," he mused. Rostov's grimace softened into a reluctant nod. "I thought it would shift suspicion," he admitted. "I'm no murderer, but I feared your scrutiny." Poirot's mustache twitched. A half-truth, perhaps, but the Count's staged attack only deepened the puzzle. Leaving Rostov to the conductor's care, Poirot returned to the lounge, where the passengers huddled, their faces a gallery of fear and mistrust. The snow outside pressed against the windows, sealing them in this rolling mausoleum. Poirot's mind turned to Elise Dupont's background, a key to unraveling the motive. From whispered conversations and the diary's revelations, he pieced together her story. Elise was no mere opera singer, but the heiress to a diamond fortune. Her sapphire necklace a war-stolen heirloom from a Russian noble family, possibly Rostov's. Its curse, whispered in society circles, was said to bring death to its wearers, a tale Elise had dismissed as superstition. Yet her diary hinted at deeper fears. "The sapphire is my burden, its history a chain." Had its past driven someone to kill? Poirot summoned Armand Dupont, whose ink-stained cuffs and haggard expression betrayed sleepless hours. "Monsieur," Poirot said, Your wife's fortune passes to you, does it not? Yet rumors of your firm's death—
About a family curse, perhaps mental instability? Vogel's spectacles glinted as he adjusted them. She suffered migraines, yes, and spoke of the Sapphire's curse, he said. His German accent clipped. I prescribed laudanum, nothing more. The cyanide was for emergencies, as I told you. Yet Poirot recalled the spilled pills, one labeled potassium cyanide, diluted. And this vial, found in the snow? Poirot asked, producing it from his pocket. Vogel paled. I discarded an empty one. Routine disposal. His protest rang hollow, and Poirot noted the faint almond scent clinging to his coat, beyond what examining the body would leave. Lady Victoria Harrington, found sipping brandy in the lounge, met Poirot's gaze with icy defiance. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her English accent sharp, you persist in harassing me. My alibi is sound. Bridge with the conductor. Yet Poirot pressed. Your blackmail by Elise over your gambling debts gives motive. And the sapphire earring found in your purse. Harrington's cigarette trembled. Planted, as I said. Someone seeks to ruin me. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Her note from the bridge game, written in fresh ink, mirrored Armand's, suggesting collusion or forgery. And your claim that Elise demanded jewels? He asked. Harrington faltered. A figure of speech, she said, but her trembling hands betrayed her. Miss Clara Beaumont, trembling in her compartment, was Poirot's next focus. Her blonde curls framed a face etched with guilt. Her broken pearl necklace scattered on the floor. Mademoiselle, Poirot said gently, your forged love letter to frame Armand was a desperate act. But the telegram, Elise plans to disinherit Armand, bears your stationery. Clara's tears spilled. I sent it to warn him, she confessed. Elise was cruel, threatening to fire me, to ruin us both. But I didn't poison her. Poirot's gaze softened, but his mind catalogued her access to Elise's champagne and her motive, jealousy and humiliation. Did you see her pour the champagne? He asked. Clara shook her head, but her eyes darted to Armand's compartment. Poirot held up the telegram, its words a spark in the tinder of suspicion. This suggests a motive, he said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. But is it truth or another red herring? Harrington accused Rostov. He's a Bolshevik spy. I saw him tampering with the drinks. Rostov retorted. Lies. She's the thief, desperate for the sapphire. Vogel remained silent, his spectacles glinting, while Clara sobbed, and Armand stood rigid, his ink-stained hands clenched. Poirot's mind aligned the fragments. Armand's inheritance, Harrington's debts, Rostov's grudge, Clara's jealousy, Vogel's cyanide. The wolfsbane suggested a second poison, amplifying the cyanide's effect, a method requiring intimate knowledge of Elise's habits. Yet, the sapphire, untouched, negated theft. The gunshot, staged by Rostov, was a distraction, like the handkerchief and earring. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The killer hides in plain sight, he said, his voice a quiet thunder. But the sapphire holds the key. The train jolted, a faint rumble signaling the avalanche's shift. In the dining car, a glass shattered, its contents fizzing with a familiar almond scent. Another poison? A passenger gasped. Poirot's gaze swept the room, noting Clara's trembling hands, Harrington's averted eyes, and Armand's sudden pallor. The lamps flickered, casting the lounge into shadow, and a new note slipped under Poirot's door. The sapphire sees all. Its disguised handwriting taunted him, a challenge from a mind as cunning as his own. Poirot stood alone, the train's stillness a mirror to his resolve. The game deepens, he murmured, his mustache twitching. But Hercule Poirot will not be outplayed. The Sapphire Express, locked in snow and secrets, held its truth tightly, but the detective's mind was a scalpel, cutting through the lies. The Sapphire Express, a gilded relic stranded in the icy embrace. Faint light of dawn filtered through the snow-draped windows, illuminating the passengers' faces, each etched with a mix of dread and defiance. Poirot's mind returned to the latest clues: the wolfsbane flower in Elise's diary, the tampered clasp of the sapphire necklace, and the vial in the snow, its almond scent a chilling echo of the cyanide. The staged gunshot in the baggage car, confessed by Rostov as a diversion, had only deepened the mystery. "The killer plays a cunning game," Poirot murmured, his mustache twitching. But Hercule Poirot sees through the shadows. He began with Armand Dupont, summoning him to the dining car, where the crimson upholstery seemed to pulse with accusation. Armand's ink-stained cuffs and haggard expression betrayed sleepless hours, his eyes dotting to the window as if seeking escape. "Monsieur Dupont," Poirot said, his voice of velvet blade, "your wife's diary speaks of infidelity, and Miss Beaumont confirms an affair. Yet you deny it. The wolfsbane flower, once in your buttonhole, is gone. Where?" Armand's hand touched his lapel, startled. "Lost," he stammered. "Elise gave it to me as a token, nothing more." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And your firm's debts? Did Elise's fortune tempt you?" Armand's face flushed. "I loved her," he insisted. "I was in my compartment, working when she died." Yet the fresh ink on his cuffs suggested a hidden act, perhaps a letter, perhaps the telegram warning of disinheritance. Poirot noted a faint tremor in his voice, a crack in his grief. Next, Poirot sought Dr. Heinrich Vogel in the corridor, where the physician's medical bag sat open, its contents a silent challenge. "Herr Doctor," Poirot said, "your cyanide vial, found in the snow, suggests carelessness or intent. And Elise's migraines. Did you prescribe more than laudanum?" Vogel's spectacles glinted as he adjusted them, his German accent clipped. "I told you. The vial was discarded, empty," he said. "Elise spoke of the sapphire's curse. Didn't kill her." Poirot noted the earring's frayed clasp, matching the necklace's tempering. "And your note from the bridge game, written in fresh ink," he said. "A forgery, perhaps?" Harrington faltered. "I wrote it later, to confirm my alibi," she admitted, but her trembling hands suggested more. Count Ivan Rostov, bandaged from his staged wound, leaned against a pillar in the smoking car, his cigarette glowing like a beacon. "You still harp on my handkerchief," he said, his Slavic accent thick with defiance. "I admitted planting it. My grudge is with Armand, not Elise." Poirot tilted his head. "Yet you argued with her over the sapphire's history, stolen from your family. And the ticket stub from a second-class carriage, did you meet her there?" Rostov exhaled smoke, his eyes distant. "I planned to steal the sapphire, yes," he confessed. "I followed her to compartment 7, but someone beat me to her." His admission, half-truth or lie, added a new thread to the web. Miss Clara Beaumont, trembling in her compartment, was Poirot's final stop. Her blonde curls framed a face pale with guilt, her broken pearl necklace scattered like tears. "Mademoiselle," Poirot said gently, "your forged love letter and the telegram on your stationery suggest desperation. Did Elise's cruelty drive you to poison?" Clara's tears spilled. "I sent the telegram to warn Armand," she confessed. "Elise was going to disinherit him, ruin us both.
She called me worthless, a parasite. But I didn't kill her. Poirot's gaze softened, but his mind catalogued her access to Elise's champagne and her motive, jealousy and humiliation. "Did you see her pour the champagne?" he asked. Clara shook her head, but her eyes darted to Armand's compartment, a silent accusation. Poirot retreated to compartment 7, where Elise's body lay beneath its sheet, the sapphire necklace a cold beacon. He examined the tempered clasp anew, its scratch suggesting a failed theft or a staged one. The ticket stub, numbered 12, hinted at a secret meeting, but the diary's wolfsbane flower,
rich with authority, paused for dramatic effect, the train's whistle a mournful underscore. Monsieur Dupin, your debts and infidelity. Lady Harrington, your blackmail. Count Rostov, your grudge. Mademoiselle Beaumont, your jealousy. Herr Doctor, your cyanide. Each thread weaves a motive, but the sapphire holds the key. Poirot's methodology shone. Order and method, he said, listing alibis chronologically. Discrepancies emerged. Clara, absent during the scream. Vogel's kit unlocked. Harrington's brief absence from bridge. Rostov's staged gunshot and planted handkerchief revealed a cunning mind, while Armand's missing wolfsbane flower suggested guilt. The receipt, linking Vogel to wolfsbane, tightened the noose. The train jolted, a faint rumble signaling movement. In the dining car, a passenger gasped as another glass shattered, its contents fizzing with an almond scent. "Another poison?" Harrington cried. Poirot's gaze swept the room, noting Clara's trembling hands, Armand's pallor, and Vogel's averted eyes. The lamps flickered, casting shadows that seemed to mock his progress. A new note slipped under his door. The sapphire's curse claims all. Its disguised handwriting taunted him, a challenge from a mind as cunning as his own. Poirot stood alone, the train's stillness a mirror to his resolve. "The killer weaves a web," he murmured, his mustache twitching. "But Hercule Poirot will cut through." The Sapphire Express, locked in snow and secrets, held its truth tightly, but the detective's mind was a lantern, illuminating the darkness, one thread at a time. Chapter 7. The Gathering Storm. The Sapphire Express, a gilded sarcophagus ensnared by the relentless snows of the Swiss Alps, stood motionless under a sky now bruised with gathering storm clouds. The dawn's faint light had faded, replaced by a brooding twilight that pressed against the frosted windows, transforming the train's opulent carriages into a claustrophobic stage for suspicion. The air inside the lounge car was heavy with the chill of distrust, the oil lamps casting waver Poirot with a mix of dread and anticipation, their breaths visible in the frigid air. His mind returned to the latest clues: the wolfsbane receipt from a Zurich apothecary, the tampered clasp of the sapphire necklace, and the vial in the snow, its almond scent, a chilling echo of the cyanide. Rostov's staged gunshot had muddied the waters, but the diary's revelations, Armand's secrets wound me, but the Count's threats terrify, pointed to a deeper motive. "The killer is close," Poirot murmured, his voice a quiet thunder, "but the truth lies beneath layers of deceit." Poirot convened the passengers in the lounge, their presence a reluctant assembly under the flickering lamps. "Messieurs et mesdames," he began, his tone commanding silence, "the web of this crime tightens. Red herrings abound, the handkerchief, the love letter, the earring, but the truth emerges through order and method." His eyes, sharp as a falcon's, scanned the faces. Armand's pallor, Harrington's defiance, Rostov's bandaged shoulder, Clara's tear-streaked cheeks, and Vogel's guarded spectacles.
Each held a piece of the puzzle, but which were clues and which were cunning distractions? He began with Armand Dupont, whose ink-stained cuffs and haggard expression betrayed sleepless hours. "Monsieur," Poirot said, his voice a velvet blade, "your wife's diary speaks of infidelity and disinheritance. Your debts are known, and the wolfsbane flower, once in your buttonhole, links you to poison." Armand's eyes darkened, his hands clenching. "I loved Elise," he insisted. "The flower was a gift, nothing more. I was in my compartment, working." Yet Poirot noted the fresh ink on his cuffs, matching the telegram's paper. "Elise plans to disinherit Armand. Act now." "And this telegram," Poirot pressed, holding it up, "suggests you had motive." Armand's face flushed. "I never saw it," he snapped, but his trembling voice betrayed a crack in his composure. Lady Victoria Harrington, seated with the poise of a queen, with defiance. "I admitted the handkerchief and the gunshot. Diversions, yes, but not murder." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Your grudge against the Duponts for stealing your family's sapphire is motive enough. And your presence near compartment 7 before the scream?" Rostov's eyes darkened. "I followed Elise, hoping to reclaim the gem, but someone else reached her first." His confession, half-truth or lie, added a new thread to the web, and Poirot recalled the diary's mention of his threats. Miss Clara Beaumont, trembling in the corner, clutched her broken pearl necklace, her blonde curls framing a face pale with guilt. "Mademoiselle," Poirot said gently, "your forged love letter and the telegram on your stationery suggest desperation. Elise's cruelty drove you, no?" Clara's tears spilled. "She humiliated me daily," she confessed. "The telegram was a warning to Armand, not a plan. I didn't poison her." Poirot's gaze softened, but his mind catalogued her access to Elise's champagne and her motive, jealousy and despair. "Did you see her pour the champagne?" he asked. Clara shook her head, but her eyes darted to Armand, a silent accusation. Dr. Heinrich Vogel, his medical bag at his side, adjusted his spectacles with clinical precision. "Herr Doctor," Poirot said, "the wolfsbane receipt near your compartment is damning, as is your missing cyanide vial." Vogel's jaw tightened. "I prescribed laudanum for Elise's migraines," he said, his German accent clipped. "The cyanide was for emergencies, as I told you. The receipt, I don't know how it got there." Yet Poirot recalled the diary's mention of a family curse and Vogel's consultation. "Did Elise request euthanasia?" he asked. Vogel paled. "She was ill, perhaps terminal," he admitted. "She asked about options, but I refused." Poirot retreated to compartment 7, where Elise's body lay beneath its sheet, the sapphire necklace a cold beacon. He examined the tampered clasp anew, its scratch suggesting a failed
"Killer poured the fatal dose in private," he said, his voice a quiet thunder. "The wolfsbane and cyanide combined suggest a mind both cunning and intimate." His eyes swept the room, noting Harrington's eavesdropping, Rostov's smirk, and Clara's sobs. Armand stood rigid, his ink-stained hands clenched, while Vogel's spectacles glinted with unease. The train jolted, a faint rumble signaling the avalanche's shift. In the dining car, another glass shattered, its contents fizzing with an almond scent. "Another attempt," Rostov muttered. Poirot's gaze hardened. "A distraction," he said. "Like the handkerchief, the earring, the gunshot. Yet the sapphire necklace, still on Elise's body, vanished in the chaos."
its absence a new puzzle. The lamps flickered, casting the lounge into shadow, and a new note slipped under Poirot's door. The sapphire claims all. Its disguised handwriting taunted him, a challenge from a mind as cunning as his own. Poirot stood alone, the train's stillness a mirror to his resolve. "The storm gathers," he murmured, his mustache twitching. "But Hercule Poirot will break it." The Sapphire Express, locked in snow and secrets, held its truth tightly. But the detective's mind was a lightning bolt, poised to strike. Shadows unveiled. The Sapphire Express, a gilded crypt locked in the icy embrace of the Swiss Alps, shuddered under the weight of gathering storm clouds, its opulent carriages now a stage for mounting dread. The snow, piled high against the frosted windows, sealed the passengers in a claustrophobic dance of suspicion, the air heavy with the chill of betrayal. Inside the lounge car, the oil lamps flickered, casting wavering shadows that seemed to whisper accusations. Hercule Poirot, his diminutive figure a beacon of relentless inquiry, stood at the heart of the chaos, his waxed mustache as precise as his mind. The murder of Madame Elise Dupont, her sapphire necklace now vanished from her lifeless form, wove a web.
Stillness, underscored by the distant howl of mountain winds, mirrored the tension, as if the Alps themselves held their breath. Poirot began a methodical search, summoning the passengers to account for their movements since the necklace vanished. He started with Armand Dupont, whose ink-stained cuffs and haggard expression betrayed sleepless hours. "Monsieur," Poirot said, his tone a velvet blade, "the necklace, worth a fortune, was your inheritance. Its theft now suggests a motive delayed." Armand's eyes darkened, his hands clenching. "I didn't take it," he insisted. "I was in the dining car, comforting Clara." Yet Poirot noted a fresh scratch on his hand, faint but suggestive of a struggle. "And your debts?" Poirot pressed. "Did the sapphire tempt you?" Armand's face flushed. "I loved Elise," he said, but his trembling voice betrayed a crack in his grief, and the missing wolfsbane flower from his buttonhole lingered in Poirot's mind. Lady Victoria Harrington, seated with defiant poise, lit a cigarette with trembling hands. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her English accent sharp, "you accuse me again? I was at bridge, then in the lounge. I had no chance to steal." Poirot tilted his head. "The sapphire earring in your purse, the blackmail by Elise, your motive is clear. And the receipt for wolfsbane, found in your possession?" Harrington's eyes flashed. "Planted, like the earring," she snapped. "Rostov's the thief. He's obsessed with that gem." Yet Poirot noted her purse, now empty of the receipt, and her alibi note, written in fresh ink, suggested forgery or collusion. "You knew the necklace's value," he said. Harrington faltered, her cigarette trembling. "I needed money, yes, but not murder," she said. But her averted eyes told another story. Count Ivan Rostov, his shoulder bandaged from the staged gunshot, leaned against a pillar, exhaling smoke. "You chase shadows, Poirot," he said, his Slavic accent thick with defiance. "I admitted the handkerchief and the gunshot, diversions, not theft." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Your obsession with the sapphire, stolen from your family, is motive enough." Catalogued her access to Elise's compartments and her motive, despair and love. "Did you see the necklace after her death?" he asked. Clara shook her head, but her eyes darted to Armand's compartment, a silent accusation. Dr. Heinrich Vogel, his medical bag at his side, adjusted his spectacles with clinical precision. "Herr Doctor," Poirot said, "the sapphire was found in your kit. Hidden, perhaps?" Vogel's jaw tightened. "I took it for safekeeping," he said, his German accent clipped. "After the gunshot, I feared theft." Yet Poirot noted the vial of cyanide still missing, and the wolfsbane receipt near his compartment. "And Elise's illness?" Poirot pressed. "You admitted she asked about euthanasia." Vogel paled. "She was desperate, believing the sapphire cursed her mind," he said. "I refused." His words hung heavy, a motive as potent as poison. Poirot retreated to compartment 7, where Elise's body lay beneath its sheet, the absence of the necklace a glaring void. He examined the tampered clasp in memory, its scratch suggesting a staged theft or a real one gone awry. The ticket stub, numbered 12, hinted at a second-class rendezvous, but the diary's wolfsbane flower linked Armand, Vogel, and Elise in a poisonous triangle. Poirot's fingers brushed the diary's final entry. "Armand's secrets wound me, but the Count's threats terrify. The sapphire is my burden." A revelation struck: the fingerprints on the champagne flute, faint but now matched to Armand's, suggested he handled it after Elise's death, perhaps to stage the scene. Poirot confronted him in the lounge. "Monsieur, your prints are on the flute," he said. Armand's face paled. "I touched it, checking for poison," he stammered, but Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Before or after her death?" Armand had no answer. Clara, summoned again, cracked under pressure. "Armand poisoned her for the inheritance," she sobbed. "I helped cover it, moved the necklace to Vogel's kit to frame him." Her confession, raw and desperate, tightened the net. But Poirot sensed a half-truth. "You loved him," he said gently. "Did you act a—" His eyes swept the room, noting Clara's tears, Armand's pallor, and Harrington's averted gaze. The lamps flickered, casting shadows that seemed to mock his progress. In Elise's jewelry box, hidden in a secret compartment, Poirot found a will naming Vogel beneficiary of a trust, not Armand. "A motive, Herr Doctor?" he asked. Vogel's spectacles glinted. "She trusted me," he said, but his voice wavered. The will, dated weeks ago, suggested a deeper bond, or deception. The storm outside intensified, the train's frame creaking under the wind's assault. A new note slipped under Poirot's door. "The sapphire's curse is eternal." Its disguised handwriting taunted him, a challenge from a mind as cunning as his own. Poirot stood alone, the train's stillness a mirror to his resolve. "The shadows part," he murmured, his moustache twitching, "but Hercule Poirot sees all." The Sapphire Express, locked in snow and secrets, held its truth tightly. But the detective's mind was a beacon, piercing the darkness, one clue at a time. Chapter 9. The Final Deduction. The Sapphire Express, a gilded prison ensnared by the unrelenting snows of the Swiss Alps, stood motionless under a sky now torn by jagged streaks of lightning. The storm's fury battered the frosted windows, transforming the train's opulent carriages into a claustrophobic crucible where secrets simmered like embers. Inside the lounge car, the oil lamps flickered, casting wavering shadows that danced like spectres across the velvet drapes. Hercule Poirot, his diminutive frame a beacon of unyielding resolve, stood at the heart of the gathering tempest, his waxed moustache as precise as his mind. The murder of Madame Elise Dupont, her sapphire necklace now vanished, a silent taunt, wove a web of motives and misdirections. A poisoned flute, a wolfsbane flower, a staged gunshot, and cryptic notes warning of a curse. Poirot's little grey cells churned, aligning the fragments. Armand Dupont's fingerprints, Clara Beaumont's confession. Each held a piece of the puzzle, but the final deduction was near. Poirot's mind returned to the autopsy notes, a critical clue overlooked in the chaos. Madame Dupont died not from cyanide alone, he said,
his tone commanding silence, but from a combination, wolfsbane extract, amplifying its effect, ingested hours before her scream. The slow-acting poison, masked by the champagne's fizz, required intimate knowledge of Elisa's habits, her nightly glass, her private moments in compartment 7. The wolfsbane receipt, found near Vogel's compartment, pointed to medical expertise, but the pressed flower in Elisa's diary linked Armand, and Clara's access to the champagne tightened the web. The killer, Poirot continued, knew her routine, her trust, her weaknesses. He turned to Armand, whose ink-stained cuffs and missing wolfsbane flower betrayed guilt. "Monsieur Dupont," Poirot said, his voice a velvet blade, "your fingerprints on the flute, your debts, your infidelity, each points to motive. The will, naming Vogel, threatened your inheritance." Armand's face flushed, his hands clenching. "I loved Elise," he protested. "I touched the flute to check for poison after her death." Yet Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And the wolfsbane in your buttonhole, now gone? A coincidence?" Armand's silence was damning, his eyes darting to Clara, a silent plea. Lady Victoria Harrington, her cigarette trembling, scoffed. "You accuse us all, Poirot," she said, her English accent sharp. "My debts were no secret, but I was at bridge." Poirot tilted his head. "Your blackmail by Elise, the planted earring, the wolfsbane receipt in your purse. Each suggests complicity. Did you procure the poison?" Harrington's eyes flashed. "Nonsense! Rostov's the thief." Yet her trembling hands, and the fresh ink on her alibi note, suggested deception. And Poirot noted her greenhouse hobby, mentioned in passing, where wolfsbane could thrive. Count Ivan Rostov, his shoulder bandaged, exhaled smoke with a smirk. "Your web ensnares us all," he said, his Slavic accent thick. "I admitted my diversions, the handkerchief, the gunshot, but I sought the sapphire, not her life." Yet her access to Elise's champagne, her intimate knowledge of her habits, made her a linchpin. "You loved Armand," Poirot said. "Did you act to save him?" Clara's sobs deepened, her silence a confession of complicity. Dr. Heinrich Vogel, his spectacles glinting, stood rigid. "Herr Doctor," Poirot said, "the will naming you beneficiary, the wolfsbane receipt, the missing cyanide vial, all point to you. Did Elise's illness make her a burden?" Vogel's jaw tightened. "She trusted me," he said, his German accent clipped. "She spoke of euthanasia, fearing the sapphire's curse on her mind. I refused." Yet the receipt and the vial in the snow suggested access, and Poirot recalled the diary's mention of a family curse, perhaps a pretext for poison. The storm outside raged, rain lashing the windows, thunder rumbling like a judgment. Poirot paced, his mind aligning the fragments. The wolfsbane, grown in Harrington's greenhouse, was accessible to all, but required expertise to use. The cyanide from Vogel's kit was stolen, but by whom? Armand's fingerprints and debts pointed to greed, Rostov's grudge to revenge, Harrington's blackmail to desperation, and Vogel's will to ambition. But Clara's confession, hiding the necklace to frame Vogel, shifted the focus. Her jealousy, her access, her motive burned brightest. Poirot's revelation came like lightning. "The killer," he said, his voice cutting through the storm, "is Miss Clara Beaumont. Driven by unrequited love for Armand and Elise's cruelty, she mixed wolfsbane and cyanide in the champagne, knowing Elise's nightly ritual." Clara's sobs turned to a wail. "She deserved it," she cried. "She humiliated me, threatened to take Armand away." Her confession, raw and desperate, unraveled the web. The forged letter, the telegram, the hidden necklace, all were her attempts to deflect guilt. But the wolfsbane, sourced from Harrington's greenhouse and mixed with Vogel's cyanide, sealed her fate. Poirot's eyes softened, but his resolve was the rails. The Sapphire Express, freed at last from the icy grip of the Swiss Alps, inched forward through the melting snow, its opulent carriages gleaming under a sky now clearing of storm clouds. The train's rhythmic clatter, a faint pulse against the receding thunder, marked the end of its imprisonment. But within its velvet-lined walls, the air remained heavy with the weight of truth unveiled. Hercule Poirot, his diminutive figure a beacon of unyielding resolve, stood in the lounge car, his waxed mustache as precise as the deductions that had unraveled the murder of Madame Elise Dupont. The sapphire necklace, its curse now a footnote to justice, had been recovered from Dr. Heinrich Vogel's medical kit, but its glittering presence had been overshadowed by Clara Beaumont's tearful confession. The web of deception, woven with wolfsbane, cyanide, a staged gunshot, and cryptic notes, had been cut through by Poirot's relentless mind, revealing Clara as the killer driven by jealousy and despair. Yet loose ends lingered, and the passengers, their faces etched with relief and remorse, awaited the final reckoning as the train neared Milan. The lounge, bathed in the soft glow of oil lamps, was a gallery of subdued emotions. The passengers, Armand Dupont, Lady Victoria Harrington, Count Ivan Rostov, Dr. Heinrich Vogel, and the now handcuffed Clara Beaumont, sat in silence, their breaths no longer visible as the train's heaters hummed back to life. Outside, the Alps loomed like silent sentinels, their peaks softened by the dawn's tentative light. Poirot's little gray cells, still humming with the satisfaction of a puzzle solved, turned to tying the final knots of the case. The wolfsbane and cyanide, Clara's intimate knowledge of Elise's habits, and the red herrings, handkerchief, earring, gunshot, had all pointed to her guilt, but the motives of the others, tangled like the train's tracks, demanded resolution. Poirot addressed the group, his voice a quiet thunder cutting through the murmurs. "Messieurs et mesdames," he began, his eyes sweeping the room. "The truth has emerged, but justice requires clarity. Mademoiselle Beaumont's confessed." "I loved Elise, despite my faults," he said. "Clara's obsession was her own." Poirot noted the absence of the wolfsbane flower from his buttonhole, a silent admission of his complicity in Elise's distrust. "Your firm's collapse awaits you in Milan," Poirot added, "a consequence of your greed." Armand's shoulders sagged, his inheritance a hollow victory, tainted by scandal. Lady Victoria Harrington, her fox fur stole draped like a shield, lit a cigarette with trembling hands. "Madame," Poirot said, "your debts and Elise's blackmail drove you to conspire with Count Rostov, planting the earring and receipt to frame others. You face charges for conspiracy, if not murder." Harrington's English accent sharpened as she protested. "I sought only to protect myself." Yet her trembling cigarette and the fresh ink on her alibi note betrayed her duplicity. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Your greenhouse, where wolfsbane grew, supplied the poison, wittingly or not." Harrington's face paled, her defiance crumbling as the weight of her actions settled. "I didn't know Clara would use it," she whispered, a half-truth Poirot let pass, knowing the authorities would decide her fate. Count Ivan Rostov, his shoulder bandaged from the staged gunshot, exhaled smoke with a smirk that no longer held defiance. "Monsieur le Comte," Poirot said, "your grudge against the Duponts, your planted handkerchief, your alliance with Harrington, all pointed to revenge, yet you did not kill." Rostov's Slavic accent was subdued as he nodded. "The sapphire was my family's," he said. "I wanted it back, nothing more." Poirot recalled the diary's mention of his threats, a red herring that had clouded the truth. "Your conspiracy with Harrington will answer to the law," Poirot said, "but your bullet was a performance, not a crime." Rostov's smirk faded, his exile now compounded by impending charges. Dr. Heinrich Vogel, his spectacles glinting with guarded unease, clutched his medical bag.
Herr Doctor, Poirot said, the will naming you beneficiary, the missing cyanide vial, the wolfsbane receipt, all suggested motive, yet you are guilty only of negligence. Vogel's jaw tightened. Greenhouse. The cyanide from Vogel's kit, mixed in Elise's champagne, was your doing. Clara's voice broke. She humiliated me. Threatened to take everything, she said. I wanted her gone. Poirot's gaze softened, but his resolve was iron. Justice will judge you, he said, but the Sapphire's curse was your own heart's darkness. The train jolted forward, its wheels grinding against the tracks as the avalanche's remnants cleared. The passengers, their roles clarified, dispersed like shadows at dawn, their secrets laid bare. Poirot retreated to compartment 7, where Elise's body had been moved to the baggage car, the sapphire necklace now secured by the conductor. Its glittering stones, once a symbol of doom, seemed diminished in the light of truth. Poirot's fingers brushed the diary's final entry. The sapphire is my burden. No, he murmured. The burden was human failing. In the lounge, the conductor, Monsieur Lefebvre, approached, his face ashen but relieved. Monsieur Poirot, the authorities await in Milan, he said. Clara will be handed over and the others questioned. Poirot nodded, his mind already turning to the next challenge. The sapphire necklace, its curse broken by clarity, was to be donated to a museum. Its history, a tale for scholars, not superstitious whispers. As the train neared Milan, the Alps receded, their peaks softened by the rising sun. Poirot stood alone, his reflection in the window a portrait of quiet triumph. The human heart, he mused, his mustache twitching, hides mysteries deeper than any gem. He boarded the next carriage, his valise in hand, ready for the next puzzle. The Sapphire Express, now a footnote in his storied career, rolled into the station, its passengers scattering like leaves in the wind. The final note, found under his door, the Sapphire's curse is broken, lay in his pocket, Clara's handwriting a final confession. Poirot's eyes gleamed with the satisfaction of a case closed. Another puzzle solved, he said softly, stepping onto the platform, where the world awaited his next triumph. The Sapphire Express, its secrets unveiled, faded into the morning light, a relic of